Welcome back to the No Ceilings NBA YouTube page and on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed. I am Maxwell Baumbach, and today I'm joined by another prospect in the 2023 NBA draft. He is a sharpshooting playmaker out of Washington State, Justin Powell. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Doing great. So 6'6" shooter. You got the playmaking juice to you as well. How would you describe your game to people that maybe are unfamiliar or just kind of coming into the draft scene now and maybe haven't seen you play?
I think you described it pretty well. Sharpshooting playmaker is kind of what I would go by, but
Mhm.
sharpshooting playmaker who has got a high IQ, a good feel for the game. Also, just kind of a smart defender when it comes to different things. But I think you said it perfect. Just a sharpshooting playmaker.
For sure, man. Sounds good. So, I always like to start at the very beginning. So, what was it that got you into basketball growing up?
So my whole family's kind of had a lineage of basketball. My
Mhm.
mom, my dad, everybody's kind of played. My brother, so it was kind of just here's a ball, go bounce it and go play. So that was kind of how I
Mhm.
started playing originally. But I fell in love with it probably my high school years. Yep.
Okay. Was your game any different than it is now? Like when you were playing in high school and stuff like that? Or have you always just kind of been the guy that you are now in terms of style?
Yeah, I think it's been a little bit similar to what it is in high school, but I think it has changed since I've gotten to college. In college, I've shot a little bit more threes than I usually did in high school because high school, I was usually the taller one, more athletic one, stuff like that. So I could kind of get away with some of the stuff going in the lane, finishing over people, stuff like that. But in college, you
Mhm.
have some of these 7-foot guys who touch the top of the backboard rotating over. So can't really do that
Mhm.
anymore. So I've kind of learned to develop a floater. That's a big thing.
Mhm.
I've definitely shot more threes in my college career.
For sure, for sure. And so yeah, so let's kind of talk about your college journey. So you started off at Auburn, and you kind of put yourself on the map pretty quickly, but like your season got short. That was that weird COVID year too. Like everything about that season was weird.
Yeah.
But like you were like top 100 some places, but I don't think you were somebody that a lot of people thought was going to make like the imprint that you did as a freshman. So what was that year like? Because everything about that season, looking back, is odd. And like you play 10 games, you overachieve. Like what was that like at the time?
It was great, honestly. Like Auburn
Mm-hmm.
was a great place. Love everything about them. Great people over there. But in the beginning, people don't realize I was on scout team 2 weeks
Man.
before the season started. So everybody's like, "Oh yeah, he started all the way through and had a great year." Like I was on scout team 2 weeks before the season, so I was expecting it to be a rougher season for myself.
Mm-hmm.
But going in there, just kind of no expectations, just kind of going in and just helping any way I could. So I was on scout team, ended up getting an opportunity to play a little bit more, took
Mm-hmm.
advantage of it, and honestly, there were some highs and there were some lows that year. But and honestly, in the beginning, there was a lot of highs for me. It was great. I got to showcase what I did in high school, and I got an opportunity early, which was good as a freshman
Mm-hmm.
because not many guys, a lot of guys are good and they're able to do stuff like that, but they just don't get the opportunity because there's different levels to things. So BP gave me a good opportunity early, and I kind of took it and ran with it.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And then um only getting to play 10 games, was that like odd? Like I don't know. Like how do you deal with that mentally? Because like so often I feel like players like to be in a rhythm, especially guys that shoot. Like you want to like have that consistency and whatever, and then having a year where things like kind of get short, it's like hit or miss as far as like when you're playing and things like that. How did you deal with the mental aspect of playing in a season where games are getting canceled and then injury, things like that?
Yeah, it was tough. So that was when I had my concussion. I had a
Mm-hmm.
great 10 games to start the season. I was on a really big high right there at the moment. So I was feeling good about myself. I was in a good rhythm. I was doing everything well, playmaking, rebounding, scoring. So I was feeling good. Ended up unfortunately having an injury at Texas A&M, so
Mm-hmm.
that kind of cut my whole season short. And even when Sharif was able to come back and play, I was excited to get out there and go play with them because I was
Mm-hmm.
able to go back to the two a little bit more and play my more natural position at the time. So I was excited to do that, but I kept ramping up and never getting rid of headaches and symptoms and stuff like that. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, couldn't end up clearing all the tests and stuff like that, so I wasn't able to play, which sucked. But I
Mm-hmm.
was in a great rhythm at the time. But I'll be honest, it was some dark times during that COVID year when I had my concussion because it was COVID as it was. So not many people get
Yeah.
contact with you, and then I couldn't leave my room because it was COVID and I couldn't do anything. So I was just sitting at the ceiling for a couple months. So it was some dark times, but a lot of phone calls were
Mhm.
made during that time.
For sure, for sure. And then I kind of view this season as like almost a continuation of some like the big games that we saw as a freshman, where it feels like everything was like really actualized, like everything came to be. What kind of clicked at Washington State for you this season?
I think it was just the people over there, honestly. Like Coach Smith and his staff, they do a great job with putting guys in position to be successful, honestly. So my freshman year, I was the point guard and had a little bit more of the ball handling role. So when I got to Washington State, that was kind of my role as well. So Coach Smith and the guys around me too, like Big Muhammad Gay, like credit to guys like that. He was able to play a lot of 2-man game with me, which helped a lot. And it was able to bring back out that pick and roll life in me. So it
Mhm.
was kind of like you said, a continuation of my freshman year a little bit, but credit to the coaching staff over there and stuff like that. They did a great job. WSU's a great program, and I love my time over there.
For sure. Yeah. It seems like they're just like really on the way up. And have had a lot of guys where it's like, man, that guy had like a great season. That guy clearly got way better year over year. Like it seems like they're doing the right thing over there. So I kind of want to put this question a little earlier than I normally do, because then we can kind of use it to get into the framework of your game.
Mhm.
But what would you bring to an NBA team, and what would you see your role being on an NBA team?
So I think my role in an NBA team would be kind of a floor spacer, especially early on in my career. I believe that my career could go a couple different ways, just depending on what a team needs. I could be a ball handling kind of playmaker as well as a shooter, like I was this past year. I could, if teams have already got that, I can just be, a straight shooter, and I could hopefully turn it into somebody like a Max Struess and with some JJ Redick, coming off screen qualities and Duncan Robinson and stuff like that. So that's what I've been adding to my game a little bit, and that's been a big help so far during this whole process. But whatever a team needs, I believe like that's what helped my freshman and junior year. I was able to handle the ball and stuff and be kind of the point guard. So if a team needs a point guard, they can get that. But if a team needs just a shooter, I'm also
Mm-hmm.
good with that. So I can play a couple different positions.
For sure. And I think that's a real value add, especially when you're looking in the second round. Is a lot of times you get guys that are pretty narrow in terms of what like their role can be, where if you can get a guy that's versatile, it gives them more paths to find a way to make a long NBA career for themselves. Let's start with the shooting, because I think the shooting is like one of the things that really popped to me. I mentioned it in like I do a quick hit section of my prospect overview where I just note a couple guys they're interesting. And when you started testing the waters for the draft, I'd written about you a little bit, because there are very few players that take the amount of threes that you do, that hit as many as you do on high volume, while also like having a high assist rate. Like it's a really nice combination of skills that make for a really good complementary player. But you take and make a lot of threes, which is very difficult to do at a high level. You've done it consistently over 3 seasons. So 3 seasons of high major college basketball, 41.9% from three. You've made 54.7% of your unguarded threes for synergy this past season. So teams can't leave you open. So how have you developed as a shooter over the years? And what, I guess, how do you drill your shooting? Like, how do you get your shooting to a point where you're able to hit it like that?
Well, first of all, shout out to Brent Roberts, not known or anything, but a good family friend. He actually
Mhm.
helped me fix my shot. So in high school, I couldn't shoot for anything. I was I
Okay.
was an awful shooter. Going in probably my freshman, sophomore year, I was a little bit better, but
Mhm.
going into high school, I was awful. I couldn't shoot, couldn't figure out if I was left or right-handed. It was
Really?
a big mess. So I've dealt with that for a while and ended up going to him. Didn't think it would work. Ended up fixing my shot, and now I'm shooting in the mid 40s and low 40s and stuff like that. So credit to him first of all, but for a shooter especially, it's all about reps and just a routine. So
Hmm.
I'm a big reps guy. Like I'll go in, I'll get my shots in the morning, get my shots at night before, like just different things. So I try to keep everything game speed, so you can get the best look in games as you are in practice and workouts and stuff like that. But a big routine is just I think every shooter's kind of got their different ones, which you see pregame and stuff like that. But routine. Those are kind of big things, but routine and reps.
Hmm. And then how have you come to deal with the amount of gravity that you create as a shooter. Because I think it's one of those things where people are like, oh yeah, it's like great, this guy is like shooting gravity. Like defenders like have to play him tight or whatever. But that like in and of itself presents challenges because you're not going to get easy looks. You have to find ways to get open. So how have you kind of evolved that element of your game?
I think college it wasn't as much because I was the point guard, and they still had to back off a little bit, so I couldn't just initiate certain things. So that helped a little bit, but big thing like you're seeing with Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, just different guys like that in playoffs and stuff right now is you just got to get really creative. Even like Steph and
Mm.
other Warriors have taken it to a different level, but just getting really creative with different things, and it can get frustrating at times because they're guarding you really tight and they're holding you on and stuff like that, but you have to figure out different ways to get open, and you just have to constantly, especially what I've learned in the pre-draft process with Adam Harrington is like you have to just constantly be moving if you're going to be a shooter.
Mm-hmm.
You have to set the screens. That's a new thing to me. Like I was never the one setting screens, so you have to
Mm-hmm.
set good screens that'll get you open. But different things like that will help, and that's just a big thing that I've learned going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Adam Harrington, for people who don't know, is a former Nets assistant, like a guy who's been around the league for a long time. With like the screening element, I think that's something that's really interesting. So something that we had a discussion about on a podcast lately is it like it seems like everybody in the NBA has to set screens now. So what has that adjustment been like? Because it's something that like doesn't really get brought up much. And I think if you're not like deep in the weeds on the film, like it's something like I think is a newer thing that we saw a lot more of this year. Like Isaiah Joe in Oklahoma City sticks out to me
Mhm.
as somebody who's like that guy was never somebody that when he was coming out of college, I was like, he's gonna have to learn how to set screens. Like that was just like never
Yeah,
something I thought. And that was
no,
2 years
yeah.
ago. Like, and now that's a part of his game. So what is like that adjustment been like and having to kind of lay into people?
It's been interesting. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember our first couple of days that we were in Adam's place working out, and he was like, all right, you're gonna set this screen and go off." And I was like, "I'm gonna set the screen." I was like, he's like, "Yeah, you're gonna set the
Mm-hmm.
screen." So watching film and doing a bunch of different things is just like realizing you have to set screens. Like I said, if you're gonna be a shooter, but it's a big element. I think we're seeing it more and more in today's game. Like the guards are setting more screens because it's doing different things. It's helping big and get open, and it's helping also create some space where big can't be in. Our guard can't be on you as much, maybe because they've got to help on that, or the big man's got to be up to touch. So doing different things like that, like it might not get you open, but it's going to get
Mm-hmm.
somebody else open, which is a big thing. So that
Yeah.
helps one, but also like then you do that once or twice, then they've got to kind of adjust, and then you're going to set the screen, and now they got to help on that, and then that's when you're going to come off and be open. So it's kind of like a little chess game, a little bit is kind of what
Mm-hmm.
I've figured out. So you have to do it a couple of times to get other people open, and even if you don't get open ever, like you're still
Mm-hmm.
getting other people open, which is a big thing for the team.
For sure. Yeah. And like, and to your point, too, like you'll see, yeah, like teams routinely do it and then kind of set it up and then that opens up different things. Or a guy will ghost a screen all of a sudden and then he's just wide
Mhm.
open. Like there's different ways to play it. And I think it's something that I kind of wish more people were paying attention to because it is like a really important kind of evolving element of the game. So you were really good on spot up threes, but there was also some stuff with like hitting transition threes. You were really good on like pull up threes. For you, do you feel like there's a big difference in terms of like shooting off the dribble or off the catch? Because generally guys are more comfortable off the catch, and then there's like rare guys like Jalen Hajafino this year who's better off the dribble or something like that. So do you feel a difference one way or the other, or are you just kind of comfortable with both because of the roles that you've played at this point?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it. The roles that I've played up to this point, it's affected me in a good way because I've been able to, I've had the ball in my hands and I've had to be able to catch and shoot too. But I've also had to be able to like create, and then as a shooter, in college, like shooting 40%, like they're gonna stay on you. So you kind of have to evolve and get creative when it comes to the college game compared to the NBA game with different sets and stuff because you have to be able to shoot it off the dribble in college if you want to be a good shooter because if not, they're really not going to leave you. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of evolved past couple of years, just getting a good pull up game from three, shooting off the dribble. Some teams still like at the last minute they'll try to with quicker guards and stuff. They'll try to jump the screen and go under it. So you have to be able to stop behind and still be able to do it off the dribble. So just doing a bunch of reps and workouts and stuff like that has helped me. But the roles that I've played in college have been able to be the one and being able to shoot. That's helped me a ton.
For sure. So yeah, like let's get into kind of the playmaking element of your game.
Mhm.
Because there aren't a lot of 6'6" guys that like really take good care of the ball and can create for other people. So 2.8 assists, 2.9 turnovers this last season. So really strong assist to turnover ratio. You graded out well as a pick and roll scorer and pick and roll passer. So obviously you mentioned like you have gravity as a scorer. How do you leverage that to set up your teammates?
So being a non-traditional point guard, I'm not the fastest when it comes to being a point guard. I'm not the quickest, but I'll use my body and my size and get to spots and do different things like that. So I'm not gonna be the guy that's always, one-on-one doing different things like that. I'm a big advantage, disadvantage guy when it comes to pick and roll stuff, but playing off of advantages and stuff like that. I think I read and I have a high IQ where I see if different people tag. I like to play at my own pace, so I don't
Mhm,
I don't like to get sped up and stuff like that. So when I come off of a ball screen, being 6'6", I can kind of probe and sit there for a second, and depending on what the weak side tag does or what the big man does, I can either hit the shooter in the corner, or I can hit the lob, or I can even take it for myself or hit the strong side corner, depending. So
mhm.
being that size and being able to kind of probe and play at my own pace, I think that kind of helped me as a pick and roll ball handler and passer.
For sure. And I'm glad that you noted like the different reads that you're looking for on the court, because I think that's one of those big things that is like a really important differentiator that goes beyond the box score. It's like, can you make more than one read? Like, are you strictly looking for the roll man? Are you strictly looking for somebody who's spotting up? And like, you do a nice job of seeing the floor and being able to spray it out if you get downhill, or just making those long, accurate cross court passes. How did that part of your game sort of come along, and when did you start to feel more comfortable? Because you mentioned like the two kind of being originally your more natural position, you end up being more of a point guard. um at what point did you start to feel more comfortable making multiple reads and knowing like, oh, I can hit that pass?
Yeah, I would say probably my senior year of high school was a big year for me. So I went back home and played for my hometown school with David Levitch. Gave me the play. He played at Louisville, and he
Hmm.
gave me the most ultimate confidence I could have ever asked for being a basketball player. And I think it helped my game in tremendous ways. I was able to have the ball in my hands a lot being at 6'6". I just came from Montverde where I wasn't on ball. Cade was on ball. Cade Cunningham was on
Hmm.
ball. So I was kind of the off ball shooter role. Went back home my senior year, and I was able to just play with the ball in my hands, but able to just come off pick and rolls and just be able to be that guy to find people. And I kind of experimented with a lot that off season in that year, which led me to being able to realize like, okay, maybe I can make these cross court bullet passes, and guys may not get them. So I ended up doing that pretty much my whole senior year. And then that translated over to my freshman year. And then after I realized, okay, I can do it in college too, then I started getting a little bit riskier with things. And I started, okay, now I can bullet this even harder, or on film, like you'll see different guys. Okay, if he's tagging here, maybe I may be able to turn around and whip it around. And I may not see him right away, but I know that because what I've seen so much in film, like that tag is
Hmm.
going to be there. So different things like that.
For sure, for sure. One thing I just want to touch on before you kind of get back into your game is like you mentioned playing, at Montverde, playing alongside people like Cade, and then even like prior to that in high school, you played with great players. You played 3 high major seasons. How do you feel like your game has been affected by playing with and against like a ton of high level competition over the last like 5, 6 years?
Yeah, I played with a bunch of guys throughout. I mean, I've unfortunately been to a couple more stops than I would have liked, but at the end of the day, like it's been great for me. I've loved every experience. I've loved every player I've played with. I've played with some really good guys in the league right now that people don't realize I've played with. So going against those guys in practice every single day, like guarding Precious Achua in practice, like that's not an easy. So
Hmm.
guarding him in high school, like that helped me a ton. Guarding Cade in high school, that helped me a ton. Moses Moody in high school, that helped me a
Hmm.
ton. Just different guys like that playing alongside Jaden Ivey in AAU, like just getting the field playing with other great guys. It's not as much like maybe competing against them. Sometimes it's just like being on the same court as them and like playing with them. Like I learned how to play a little bit more off ball when I was playing with Jaden and Nigel Pack and Indy Heat for AAU. So doing different things like that, like realizing how other high level players play, that affects your game a little bit. And you're not going to have the same game because you have a bunch of good guys on a great team. So you have to kind of alter your game a little bit. So doing that has helped me a ton.
For sure. And do you think that's helped in terms of like role adaptability then too? Like just being able to play a different role, like knowing like, hey, I've got to play off of Jaden Ivey. I've got to play off Muhammad Gay, Precious Achua, like totally different kinds of guys too.
For sure. Like I've had to play off of point guards that are I'm more the two. I've had to play the one where different guys are the two. I've had to play where guys like Muhammad Gay are initiating the offense 90% of the time, and you got to play off of a big man. So playing 1, 2, 3, I mean, doing different things with different people initiating it, like it's given me a lot of roles that I feel like I've had a lot of good experience at and a lot of good reps at that it could be useful in the future.
For sure. For sure. So let's talk about ball handling a little bit because you do, like I mentioned, like you take good care of the ball. But something that stands out on film that I think again gets like overlooked a lot is confidence with both hands. Like you were as likely to kind of drive in either direction, which makes it a little tougher to read you. Can you talk about just the importance of that and then how you can pounce on that on the defensive end too when you know a guy isn't as comfortable using their offhand?
Yeah, I was always ambidextrous growing up, so I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
left-handed. People don't know that.
Okay.
Uh, People might have heard it different broadcasts and stuff like that. They mentioned
Mm-hmm.
it a couple of times, but my parents didn't know when I was younger, so they taught me everything left or everything righty, and I was really
Mm-hmm.
left-handed.
Okay.
So here's your brother's glove. Go play basketball, shoot righty. So that's what honestly it was a struggle in the beginning playing some different sports because I didn't know I wanted to naturally use my left hand, but I was using my right hand. So
Mm-hmm.
that was a little tough in the beginning for some sports, but like you said, when it comes to driving, like I might not throw this camera point out there, but I actually like probably sometimes going left off of a pick and roll because people don't think I can
Mm-hmm.
throw a left-handed cross-court pass to the corner, which I can do. So some guys will force me left on screens. Some teams picked up on it that when I go, I can also go left, and I honestly prefer a little bit going left with different things at the top of the key with pick and roll stuff. So that helped me a ton being able to play with both hands. And I think some guys towards the end of the year, they would square me up a little bit more because they realized like he can go left, he can go right, and he's good passing both hands going both ways. So a lot of guys just kind of, they tried to figure out different things towards the end of the year, but a lot of them score me up. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then like on the defensive end, like is that something that you notice? And if so, like how big of an advantage does that create for you on the defensive end when you know like I can just force this guy here?
I think it was big because obviously you play with some guys who are mostly left-handed and dominant left-handed, and they won't go right, or they can only go left, and they're only going to pull up out of their left hand, or vice versa, they're only going to do it out of their right hand. So doing different things that helped me a little bit, but scouting report was big for me on that. Like, okay, this guy gets to this spot, he's a lot better shooter than he is on the left elbow. He's a lot better right elbow than he is left elbow. So um, different guys, it was kind of a little bit easier in my opinion to guard because of their tendencies on offense with their hands and which ones they preferred. But uh, you could also push up into them certain guys a little bit more because like they're not going to cross back over. If they do cross back
Mm-hmm.
over, they're coming back to that left or right hand. So
Yeah.
that was a little bit easier with some guys, but like I said, guys that were use both hands very equally, like a guy that comes to mind is like Tiger Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
He was kind of a little bit similar to me. Like he liked his left hand a little bit more than people thought. So he was dominant right hand, but he liked his left hand. He was comfortable left hand. So
Mm-hmm.
he was a little bit difficult to guard just because he could use both hands and you didn't know what he was going to do. And he was just as fast both hands. So and
Mm-hmm.
smooth both hands. So different guys like that, it was a lot harder to guard than some others for sure.
Yeah, yeah. And then so let's just talk about defense in general. Like something you mentioned is, your IQ, your feel on that end. Um, what position do you think you're like most likely and like most comfortable guarding out of the gate? And then what do you think you bring on that end of the floor?
I think a 2-3 it would
Mm-hmm.
be my big thing because there's a lot quicker guards at the one. There's a lot
Mm-hmm.
quicker guards on the defensive end that can guard that. But I tell people all the time, if it's me and John Moran or Drew Holiday full court, 9 times out of 10, like they're probably 10 times out of 10, they're gonna blow by me, and they're if I'm guarding them full court. And I know my limitations when it comes to certain things, and I'm realistic. So I'm not going to be the guy to 94 feet stay in front and work them. Like that's just not going to be
Mm-hmm.
me. I'm going to be a guy who's going to play smart on defense. I'm good at rotations. I'm good at playing out of just reading and reacting. Like if a guy gets beat, okay, I can go help, and then he can peel off and take my guy. So doing different things like that is the defenses that I strive in kind of, and do different things like that. But scouting reports are big for me. So
Mhm.
I'm one that I've always got to know the scouting report really well, especially being a point guard last year and stuff like that. I really had to know them. But defensively, I figured out that like it helps me a lot more knowing other guys' tendencies. Yeah, you can see like certain scouting reports, and then you get into it a little bit, but I have to go even more advanced. I like to
Mhm.
do that, and I like to figure out what spots guys like and what hands they like you said, and okay, they had a big game this game. Let's watch it, see what they did. They had a less scoring game this game. Let's see what they did and did this and how to impact them. So just doing different things like that and really paying attention to scouting reports on defense was big for me. But also like I'm a guy I'm great in rotations, the high IQ, it helps in that stuff. So if it's a guy that might not be as good of a finisher, but he's a better shooter, like it may look like you get blown by, but my plan was to originally run him off
That's
the
chase him off
line.
the line.
So,
Yep.
yeah,
Mhm.
get him off the line so he can go down to Big Muhammad Gay and he can block
Mhm.
it, or different guys like that. Like some people, like you said, the casual guy watching him might be like, "Oh, this guy can't guard anything."
But I
Some
thought
of
it was
these,
interesting. Yeah, so like one thing I noticed, like I doing my deep dive on you, I was going through
yeah,
advanced numbers. And like on synergy, you allowed less than half a point per possession on pick and rolls, which is like categorized as excellent. Like people might get hung up on like the speed or whatever, but like you found
mhm.
a really effective way to limit guys' ability to score in the pick and roll.
Yeah. I think that was just talking to Big Muhammad Gay all the time. It was just like, okay, this guy might not be able to shoot. I might still make him go over just because he's a really good passer dynamically downhill. And if he screens, okay, then you're a little torn up a little bit in there and you're a little kind of tangled up. But it was just communication the whole time. But like I said, scouting reports were huge for me because different guys, you figure out their tendencies, you figure out just different ways they like to play, and you have years and years of college film on some of these guys, so it's easy to go watch the film, and especially in the league,
Mm-hmm.
like some of these guys have been in the league for 20 years, so I think that's going to be an advantage sometimes to me is doing my homework a lot, and I like to do like I got no problem sitting there for a couple hours and picking apart a couple guys in my matchups game and stuff like that. So doing different things like that in the pick and roll. Like I might not be the most physically athletic gifted dude, but I try to play really smart just because I kind of have to.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And it's good that you like, yeah, like that's how you got to approach it. What have been like the biggest things that you've been working on during the pre-draft process? Like what's the biggest thing you want to say? Like, I want to be able to show, well, I mean, like now you've already worked out for like a million teams, but like but like what have been the things that you were like when the college season ended that like when you initially decided, hey, I'm going to test the waters, like what were the things that you really wanted to be able to show teams that might be different or new, or just say, hey, look, I'm even better at this?
I think a lot of teams like they watched me play the one for 2 years in my college career, and they realized like, yeah, he can take care of the ball and he's a good point guard. We see he can shoot, but a lot of teams didn't see the side of me of like coming off of pin downs, wide pin action, stuff like that, just flying off of screens and been able to just like catch, shoot, just right away, like keep it high, do different things like that. But just having a quick release, maybe fading away off balance a little bit, but still being able to knock down those shots like a Duncan, like a JJ Redick, guys like
Mm-hmm.
that. So the big thing in my pre-draft process when I was going with Adam Harrington was, okay, he's been around the game. He's been around guys like Joe Harris, who's
Yep.
done very well for himself, and just he was around him and shoot the lights out.
Mm-hmm.
One of the best shooters in the league, and he was when he was there. So it was just like, okay, what did he do on a day-to-day basis, and what actions did you do with him, and how did it work, and like, how do I get to that point, kind of? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that has helped me a ton in this pre-draft process of, okay, we know he can handle the ball, and he played point guard, and he was, didn't turn it over, different things like that. But how can he be if he was just a shooter? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what would his role kind of be, and how can he do that? So just flying off screens and doing that for 2 months before I got to team workouts, I mean, it's helped me a ton.
For sure. And yes, like you mentioned that we talked about the team workouts a little bit. You initially were testing the water, so you did have the option to go back. Was there a point in the process where like the feedback reached a point that you were like, you know what, I'm staying in? Because I think you announced you were staying in like pretty late, but
Yeah.
was there a point along the way? Like, can you say like, oh, like mid-May or whatever? Like I kind of knew I was staying in. Like, was there a point where you were like, all right, I think I'm going.
Honestly, I wasn't. I didn't really have a specific time. I kind
Mhm.
of took it up to that last day of just getting all the feedback I could. It wasn't like, oh, I got, a couple good feedbacks, bad feedbacks. Nah, I'm gonna
Mhm.
outweigh the good bad. I'm gonna go just to go.
Mhm.
I still had that year of eligibility if I wanted it. I love playing at WSU, so taking that, I mean, I took up till I think the last like hour or so,
Mhm.
2 hours. So
A
a
lot of
lot
guys
of
did. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah.
yeah, it was just a lot. I wanted every single piece of information that I could get before making that decision, and it was a hard decision, but I got some great feedback along the way, and it was a lot of positive feedback and stuff like that. So at that point, I figured, okay, you know what, I'm in some, I'm doing pretty good throughout this
Mhm.
process. I'm getting good feedback. I think I'm going to keep my name
For sure. So you've had a lot of team workouts. How
in.
how do you deal with just like all of that? Because I think that's one of those things that gets overlooked that like we for this site this year we've done more interviews with players than we ever have. And it's been just wild to see like a closer look at like, oh man, these guys are going from like city to city. They're working out constantly. Like there's balancing a lot of challenges like all of a sudden. So how has that whole process been like working out for I think like nearly half the league or whatever it is at this point? Like how do you deal with it?
It's a good process, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Like it, if you love basketball, you're gonna love it. But it's I'll be honest, some days it's not fun to travel
Mm-hmm.
and stuff like that. But it gives you a little taste of what the NBA is, just the traveling and the playing and stuff like that. But it's a gauntlet. It's tough because I remember I had a back to back and my flight got delayed a bunch and I got in at like 2 a.m. hadn't eaten
Mm-hmm.
dinner and the next day I had to be up at like 6:30 to go work out for the next team. So
Mm-hmm.
uh, I mean, you only get a couple hours of sleep sometimes. Sometimes your best sleep is on a plane right now. So doing different things like that, you gotta figure out different ways, like sleeping on planes, like to get just a couple hours to get your body, feeling good for the next workout because you might have a back to back, you might have a back to
Mm-hmm.
back to back. Some guys
Yeah.
even might have four back to backs, which is brutal, but
Mm-hmm.
I've heard different stories of that. So it's a tough process. It definitely takes a toll on you, your mind, your body, but it's all basketball. It's all good at the end of the day. It's all fun. It gets tough, like I said, going city to city and working out because yeah, some of these teams like they want to get the most. Like obviously they all want to get the most out of you, but
Yeah.
you're gonna run sprints, you're gonna do different things. So you have to mentally be ready, but you also like your body physically has to be ready to go because at the end of the day, you're competing for a job. Like it's not
Yeah.
like you go there and just, oh, I'm gonna go and just get a good little workout in and that's it. Like it's a job interview. Like you
That's your
want to go
livelihood.
and
Yeah.
show people, yeah, you want to have your best day that you can possibly have because that might be the separator of you or the guy next to you who they're thinking about taking too. So
Mm-hmm.
it's tough, but it's all fun and it's all good. It's all basketball at the end of the day.
For sure. For sure. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time and coming on here. Where can people find you and follow you on social media to kind of keep following your journey up until draft night and beyond?
Yeah, so Instagram, I'm JT Powell 24. I'll post some things on there, but Twitter, I'm JT Powell 241. My agent George Langberg done a great job throughout this whole process. He's been like older brother to me. I've known him for a couple of years and stuff like that, going through these whole processes and stuff. So um, he's been great to me. You can also figure out his follow his stuff, and that's a big part of my game. It's just having him being able to go through him and stuff like that. So he's been great. But those are my socials. You can follow me going forward.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us and thank you for tuning in. If you're not subscribed already, please subscribe to us on YouTube, on the No Ceilings NBA podcast feed, and our Substack for written work every single day, NoCeilingsNBA.com. Justin, thanks for joining us and thanks for tuning in.
No, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.